Hello and welcome to session 10. Today we have a kind of unusual session in as much as we need to talk about how to process the results of our essays and how to respond to peer review. Now, luckily, everybody's going to get the opportunity to respond to peer review vis-a-vis this week's discussion questions. But before I get too far ahead of myself, what I'm going to do is review this process with you. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little share screen. I'm also going to disconnect my video so that the process runs a little bit more smoothly. So I'm going to mute my screen. You can choose to do whatever you prefer, but I'm going to mute my screen for just a little while. Okay. I'm going to go to share, and we're going to look, of course, at our homepage first. So on our homepage for today, session 10, you can see that I want to talk a little bit about the essays today and then discuss some of the peer review process. Let me admit the student real quick. Then, with the time that we have remaining, I would like to spend just a little bit of time talking about our text for the semester, The Princess Bride. And I want to introduce you to some of the key concepts and perhaps, I hope, answer some questions that you might have about that text. And then once we finish that discussion, I want to go ahead and give you some class time to approach the weekly discussion question if you have not had a chance to look at it just yet. Of course, for next time, if you have not already read The Princess Bride chapters 1 and 2, please do that so that you'll be able to discuss that those chapters with us next time. So that's a brief preview of what we're going to discuss today. Now, in terms of review, we have come off of our writing lab week in a very successful fashion. We were able to, over the course of this past week, create an ad analysis essay. I should say a draft of an ad analysis essay. So to explain what that's all involved with, I'm going to share a different screen. I know you're probably very familiar, if not sick of looking at this. This is probably the last time I'm going to spend any class time going over it. But here we are, the ad analysis. Remember that primarily the revision, which is what we'll be responsible for now, is not due this week, but not until the first Friday of October, the 2nd. So what we had to do was critically review a print or other media advertisements in order to examine its rhetorical elements. We composed an essay that described the ad in question, but then went beyond just a pure description to actually help our readers understand the ad itself and what its message or purpose really was. That includes explaining who the ideal or specific audience for that ad was and the context in which it appeared for them. We then commented upon the visual content related to the ad itself and explored how effective or how ineffective we thought the strength of the relative ad actually was. Okay. So, going back for a moment to our homepage, we have to now change our focus as we begin this next week to the revision side of things. So let me open up a little bit of our discussion for you. I'm going to click on the discussion tab for a second. But before we get into the discussions, I would like to ask you all, what do you think of when you think of revision?
To make it better, to revise something is to do it over and correct, I guess, what's wrong or make it better, because it could still be good, but it could probably be better.
That's a really good answer, Sonia. I really like that. At first you said to fix it, but then you quickly restated that you want to improve upon it. And that's exactly right. That's what a revision process really is all about. You look at the strengths of the initial essay first. What are those elements that you successfully completed according to the assignment rubric? Because a number of you did several things that were successful in creating the initial draft. Now, of course, there may be some things that you need to polish up, like Mr. Fowler's nitpicky, thoughts regarding stuff like grammar, right? It's not always the same for every instructor, but those are all concerns that we have to consider when thinking about the entirety of the paper. So, yes.
There we go. Sorry, all right, continue.
Okay. So that's part of what we want to discuss today. How can we go about this process? Now, I have tried to help with some minor commentary, and I've also tried to focus on the grammatical issues that I'd like you to attend to in order to make sure that your writing is being conveyed smoothly to your audience. But you're still going to need a real world audience to bounce your ideas off of. And that's why we engage in a little bit of peer review. So if you think about it, the whole writing process is kind of like a vacuum. And I know a couple of you have had me before, have heard me go through this, so bear with me. In the beginning, it's only you in a vacuum without any outside contact or extra information. Then you invite me and we begin a discussion thinking about the grammatical components and how ideas are best expressed. Now you need to invite another member, another reader into this unique experience so that you can make sure that your message is being understood by them. And if you can establish an understanding with your audience, not just your instructor, Mr. Fowler, but with another outside audience member. And even better, if you can convince them that your perspective is the correct one to take, you'll know that you've been successful. So that's another big reason why we engage in peer review, because we can help each other and ask one another questions if there are concerns that we have regarding the nature of the argument or the validity of our perspective. Again, hopefully we can convince our audience or our reader of these ideas, and at the very least, we may be able to help them understand some of our perspectives. Okay, Let me see here. I'm going to stop my video for a second. So now I just want to spend some time with you all regarding questions that you might have about the initial peer review. Did everybody find
We going?
the peer review?
No.
Okay.
Was it the one you emailed?
Yeah, a couple of you, I emailed it
Something like that?
directly to you. If you were unable to find the Dropbox, a couple of you expressed some confusion about the Dropbox. So I tried to adjust that. So yes, that was one item that I talked to you about. Did anybody have problems finding them on Desire to Learn for those who did find the Dropbox?
I haven't
Yeah.
looked yet, but as soon as I do, I can let you know.
Okay, yeah, it's not necessarily emailed though. It's found vis-a-vis the Dropbox feedback.
Under assignments?
Yes. So let me go there with you. So I'm gonna do a quick share screen again, and I'm just gonna go back before we get into discussions. I'm just gonna go back to assignments real quick. And I might need to change from Mr. Fowler to the student view. So bear with me while I do that, because it sounds like I do have some questions. Okay. So I'm going to click on the assignments tab. And now that I'm a student, I should see a version. Now for me, it looks odd because student Mr. Fowler, shame on him, he has not submitted his essay just yet. But here, you should see a column that says assignments, and it has a blue hypertext link to add analysis. And then you should see a completion status and a score and an evaluation status. Under this column, evaluation status, you should see another hyperlink that says feedback on it. So if you haven't seen that just yet, go ahead and take a few moments, go to the assignments link, click on your paper and look and see if you can find some feedback.
Yeah,
Again, it should be
I could
available.
if it would load. Like, sheesh.
Yeah, it should
There
be
we go.
available vis-a-vis that link. So take a few minutes to check on that, and then just let me know if anybody.
I see it all.
Okay. Now the other thing that you might need to be aware of is
Should the gray be there as well or no?
near the bottom of the paper, there should be. Do you mean on the paper? So the grade should be in two places. Hold on. If you submitted it through Desire to Learn, then the grade should appear. If you did not submit it through Desire to Learn, I may need to add it into the grade.
Yeah,
All right, then I'm the one, because remember I did it through your email, so I have to wait.
That's okay. It should still be on your paper. After the comments, you should have a numerical score and a grade percentage, though. Do you see that?
I do, I have all of that.
Okay.
but-
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I have all of that.
Good.
That's why I thanked you this morning.
No, oh, yeah. You're
I also have that. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Is there anybody that's having any difficulty with that? Sounds like we're okay so far.
Hmm.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just looking back through my own essay as I compare what you said to mine.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to point out, since you brought that up in terms of questions and comparison, you should see on the side of your paper in the margins little dialogue balloons. Now, if you've never used this version, this editing thing before, if you click on those little dialogue balloons, they'll expand, and you can see more detailed bits of information about each of my comments.
Very nice.
Okay, very good. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the next step. I'm going to have to share some screen with you again. So bear with me. This is the last shared screen I need to show you. Okay, so today, I'll make this a little bit bigger. We want to go ahead and discuss the peer review process. So in the discussion forums, you should see this form or a version of this form. Very familiar for those of you who have had this class with me before. So one more time, I'm going to ask you to bear with me as I read through this text scroll. Writing in both college and in life requires more than simply channeling your own thoughts and feelings into paper. As we are learning through our discussions, being a writer means being involved in dynamic, multifaceted conversations about complex topics. In order to be effective in this work, writers have to understand who they're talking to and what is likely to be compelling that specific audience. Similarly, when we offer feedback about other writers' work, we need to make choices about what we suggest and how we suggest it. So that's the first thing that I want to talk to you about. When we engage in peer review, we have to consider how we respond constructively to the criticisms that were offered and how to offer criticism in return that is constructive in nature. In other words, it's not very helpful to anybody to simply say, oh, there's an error here, or this is a problem, or I really don't understand this concept. Instead, you may want to say things like, I think you have a good point here, and then use the term I feel. If you've had me before in class, you're familiar with my philosophy on this, but if not, it's a really good way to acknowledge a critical issue that has to be brought to bear. Rather than saying, I think this, or you should do that, when you say, I feel your essay could be improved by X, Y, and Z, you have an opportunity to create more of a dialogue, because you can't necessarily respond to somebody negatively if they explain how they feel about the way your paper could be expressed more clearly, or how ideas are not tracking for you as a reader from one point to the next. That may seem like sort of a aw shucks, good-natured sort of idea, but I've found in life that it's easier to engage, especially with difficult issues and discussions, by just using a term that I feel. It puts people a little bit more at ease. Now, Devin, I see you've got a question. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to let you know that how your screen is when it's zoomed out, I can hardly see the words. It's kind of like blurring in and out.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, can you zoom in a bit more?
Zoom in.
Yeah.
Any
Oh,
better?
should just get smaller.
It gets smaller that way? Ooh.
Wait, I try. Okay, one more.
One more. Better or
Okay,
worse?
I don't think it's kind of getting worse 'cause
Oh
I'm still not
my.
able to like properly. Yeah,
Okay.
It looks all right
never
on
mind that.
mine. I was gonna say if maybe you just try zooming a little bit more, it'll look
A
a
little
little bit
more?
closer for you.
Should, okay. Should
It
I
looks
try a
all
little
right.
more? Is that better or worse, Devin?
I, I don't know what's going on. The words are just popping in and out because it looks good, but for me,
Okay.
it's just popping in and out.
Well, if it continues to happen, just keep me apprised, and we'll
Yeah, just
adjust as we can. All right. Whoop. Hello.
Good word choice too. Love it.
Okay. So as you read and comment on your workshop partners paper, so first of all, before you even answer the questions, make sure that you read their entire paper. Think about the kind of feedback that you would find most helpful. And keep in mind that it's important to both let the writer know it's working well in his or her draft, as well as specific things that could be improved. The questions below are designed to help guide your comments with respect to the particular requirements for our first essay assignment. Notice that I say that they're designed to help guide your comments. You may offer more detailed commentary if you feel it's appropriate for your particular student paper. Okay, so what are the questions themselves? Obviously, I try to point this out in as many papers as possible because I thought everybody did a really good job in establishing a distinctive thesis. So what is that thesis according to the essay? Number 2, what, if any, visual or design elements did the author identify in the essay? Not everybody stopped and said, I want to look at these specific design elements. Some students, and this is fine, this is not a criticism, but some students just looked at the process and described the ad in one burst. That's okay. They may not have had specific points that they focused on. So that may be something that you need to adjust to when you're responding. Is there an effective hook device that brings you in as a reader? Some students did an excellent job engaging the reader's interest, or at least from my perspective, they did. So I would say I felt that they did a good job bringing in my attention. Other students did, again, like I said, they just jumped right into the process and got things rolling. So is there a hook that you find to be effective? Now, the last 3 are pretty important. Does the essay's format adhere to the assignment description? Did they have a, look, I've got some background noise. Somebody might want to mute their background noise.
Yeah, train. Hold up.
Train
Yeah.
coming through.
Yep. Oh, thank you. So what, if any, visual design, sorry, I lost my place. Does the essay's format adhere to the assignment description? Did they use the 4-line list at the top of the paper? Did they have page numbers on the upper right-hand side? Are there multiple body paragraphs? Is it double spaced? Does the author use effective transitions from one paragraph to the next? Lastly, according to your analysis of what you've read, does the author find the ad to actually be compelling? And lastly, does the author need to use effective in-text or parenthetical words and works cited page citations? This was not a requirement for this paper. I'll say that again. This was not a requirement for this actual paper, but some of you did go above and beyond the call, and when you did want to use a piece of evidence to back up your thought process, you all did so relatively well. So you may find that your particular example that you select does in fact make use of citations. So if that's the case, you can just explain how well or how effectively you felt those citations were used. Okay,
So,
yes,
I have a quick question.
go for it.
So if we're doing the peer review, so we don't have to look for that as much for this paper in particular.
Mhm. Go
Okay, I'm sorry.
go ahead. So if you're doing
Look for
this,
what?
if you're doing this peer review and you did not use citations, you don't have to worry about that. Was that the question?
Yeah, just like if we like have an example that like may or may not like have as many like of the direct citations like you were saying, like if we shouldn't consider that as much of like the criticism part.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Like I said, not every
Okay.
student used citations for their paper. It was not required for this first assignment. So I wouldn't worry about it that one too much. But if they did use
Okay.
a citation, you can discuss how effectively you felt that was used as a piece of evidence.
Sounds good.
Good
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah, excellent question. Okay. That was a good question. Any other questions about the peer review process before we go ahead?
Are we being assigned another student, or are we? how
That's
is
an
this?
excellent question, Kevin. So my theory, and again, this is a theory, so I can change this if you all feel uncomfortable with it. But what I was theorizing we could do is that we could use our discussion forums to respond to these questions. We might format them a little bit differently, and we could say, well, I felt that so-and-so's paper did an excellent job of X, Y, and Z. However, if that makes you uncomfortable, I can just let you all use the class link option. Remember that where the class link option is? Right up here for the class list. You could select a class list student, okay? And you could reach out to them and share your paper with them vis-a-vis email. So I don't like to assign students a peer review partner at this level because I feel like some students may be more familiar or more comfortable picking their own partners. But if anybody ends up not being able to connect, we can use the discussion forums. Now, last semester, being the summer, I tried to let students just connect using class list and revise peer review papers that way. But what happened is I always ended up with a few students, and it was always the same few students who didn't ever get a peer review partner. And some people would get 2 or 3 peer reviews, and then others would get none. So that's kind of lopsided. So one thing I thought I could try is that I could put this up there as part of our discussion question responses. So then that asks you to select a student and respond to these questions. So you can double up your work effort this week. You can complete your weekly discussion questions, plus you can offer someone an excellent piece of peer review criticism. That's my theory. what do you think about it? Kevin, I'll start with you since you raised your initial question. Which of the two options would you prefer?
Oh, I like the discussion post. I just don't understand what you're saying is going to happen. How are we going to, are we going to post our paper on the discussion and then people are going to read it and respond?
Well, that is one way you could do it, but what I was thinking is that you would reach out to a student on the discussion post and say something like, hey, I'm up for some peer review commentary. Would anybody like to review my paper and offer some commentary? And then, you know, the first person that gets to that is able to respond with their comments. And then you can do the same thing for another person's paper. So that's how I would imagine it going. And that way, no one's sort of left hanging, because depending on when you post your desire for peer review, then you can get your you can get a response.
And then we would just send it via email.
What's that?
First come, first serve type.
Yeah. Kind of first come, first serve.
Like everyone responds to one.
Right. And you don't necessarily have to have the person whose paper you responded to be the person whose paper, you know, who responds to your paper.
But if it works that way, it's fine too, right?
Sure. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Kevin gave me some good feedback. Andrea, what is your feeling like?
Yeah, I like that idea. I just I hope that we don't like kind of see someone's post and post at the same time, because you know there's not really like a little thing where we can see like someone is typing. So I'm just scared someone's gonna like double post on someone's, but hopefully that won't be the issue. That won't be the case, you know.
Yeah, and even if we do get a couple of double posts, that's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's just more
Okay.
thoughtful material to digest. The other thing is, if we try this and it kind of falls apart, you still have my feedback to operate from. And we don't always have to do it like this. This is a way that I think that we could encourage some active learning in an online class, which is hard to come across. But I think if we kind of break up into these little groups, if we use this group forum rather, I think that we could be somewhat successful this way. If it doesn't work, I'll think of other ways that we could, for future papers, I'll think of other ways that we could get it done. This is another opportunity too, where you as a student might have the better idea. So I'm just going to go around and when you're tired of talking about it, I'll move on. But how about you, Nehemiah? Do you have any questions or thoughts about this?
I do not.
Okay. Kyle, how about yourself? Devin, any thoughts? Jackson, any thoughts? You can also type them in.
Crap. I was muted, my bad. I said no.
Oh, go ahead, Devin.
I said no.
You can
I
also
said no thoughts right now. Just hope we all get along well as we post our reviews.
Yeah. You can also, type your responses into the chat if you'd rather type. Sonia, any thoughts so far? Does it sound like an okay idea?
It's okay. I mean, you've given a lot of options. Three. One, we could do discussions, we could do the class list, or we could just as well go by your review. So that's good.
Exactly.
Meaning if you don't get the other two, you have yours. So I'm pretty good with that. In fact, I'm more better with that than anything.
Okay, and that's fine as well. Caitlin, how about yourself?
So we only answered a one, correct?
That's right, Andrea. That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Sure. All right.
Caitlin, any thoughts or ideas?
I'm good right now.
Okay. How about Miss Galloway? Sorry, I forgot. Sometimes I have two Caitlins in here. Whoops. I don't know if she can hear me. Kaylee, any thoughts or ideas? Oh, okay. Kaylee just said that she's good with that. She likes the various options. That's kind of what Sonia was reiterating as well. Yeah, very good. Tyler, any thoughts or ideas?
Questions, comments, concerns, songs, interpretive dances.
Okay. Well, and Lucas, did
All
you have
good
any?
here.
Oh, Lucas, did you have any thoughts?
No, I'm okay for now. Thank you.
I had a
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Is there going to be some form of like rubric or grading with this peer review, or not the peer review, with the overall revision?
I think that's what we were just looking at.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I was kind of spacing.
No, that's good.
Oops.
That's totally good. So let me bring up an example paper real quick. Let me share the sample paper. Okay, so this is a student from another class. Hold on. I want to save this person's anonymity. Give me just one more second. Okay. Try this one more time. There we go. I had to kind of do this on the fly. That's not the one I wanted to share, obviously.
Were you posting that in the chat here or on? Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
It's okay. That was a great question. So this is an example, and again, this might blur for some of you, but I was trying to make it a little larger. So this one had 20, this was a 25-point assignment. So what I have done here, between this version and the final version, I will update or adjust the rubric to reflect any improvements that I've noticed between the initial draft and the final draft. So I break it down into what kind of focus and details do you add to the analysis? How well is the paper organized, and are the citations used correctly? So if you just do that, if you just have a well-organized, well-formatted paper in MLA and your citations are precise, I think that's 5 easy points. Next, it's a little bit, I would suggest the most complicated factor for the whole paper, which is your voice. How well do you assert your sense of authorial voice? In what way do you bring yourself into this essay writing, process? And then again, sentence structure, spelling, grammar, word choice, grammar mechanics, those are just basic things that, drive the style from one aspect to the other. Does that help, Kevin?
I'm following a bit. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. There's not just going to be like a cut and dry rubric for it. It's the whole process here.
Yeah. And of course, for the peer review process, you'll get the participation points there.
Yeah. Okay. So we just
factored into your weekly discussion response.
Okay.
Tyler said he was okay with things. So I'm going to switch a little bit now, unless there are some other remaining questions. And remember, this is mostly your time today. Any questions you have are good at questions to ask.
Oh shoot, Discord link. Yeah.
If something comes up and you think of a question as we're finishing up today's discussion, go ahead and use the hand raise question, their hand raise option, and then I'll pause in my my diatribe so that I can answer your questions. Okay. That's not what I wanted to do. There we go. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the start of our text, the Princess Bride. Again, I tried to post frequently, and I posted a few reminders to try to grab a copy of this by the 15th. So if you have not yet found a copy, you may want to find one so that you can follow along in our discussion. The one that I have here is the 30th anniversary edition. So it came out, I think, in 2003 or something like that, or about that time. So one of the first things that I want to address is some questions that have arrived as we begin to discuss this text. Right here on the front page, you'll see it says, The Princess Bride, and it says it's S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure. Okay, the Good Parts version, abridged by William Goldman. That's the same one that Devin's holding up there. So let's start there. I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you all a question. I know a couple people even reached out to me. They were doing their due diligence as students, and they reached out to me. Did anybody have any trouble finding the abridged version?
I haven't found a version at all. I'm going to try into Calb at the bookstore. I didn't, next to the tax place, but the library doesn't have it. And because of all that's going on, you just can't get books the way you want it anymore. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
No.
I don't even have it.
Okay. So you might need to reach out. And I've tried to find a digital version, an ebook version of this, and it's proved to be relatively elusive. I know it is available on Audible, though. If that is an option that works, I don't know if it works for everybody, but I did want to mention that. So the first thing that's tricky about this book is that it claims to be an abridged version of another story. And several students, like I said, did their due diligence and reached out to me, and they said, should I get the abridged version or the unabridged version? Well, here's the part of the joke that you kind of have to be in on. There is no unabridged version. S. Morgenstern doesn't exist either. He's made up by the author, William Goldman. So when you read the Good Parts edition of The Princess Bride, that's the only edition there is. That's the only edition there ever was, going way back to late, great 1973.
Right.
So the first thing, the first thing I have to
That's
ask,
crazy.
yeah, the first thing I have to ask you is why? Why complicate an already difficult process? Why do you think William Goldman would bother to create this fictional author, or the idea that this was a pre-existing fairy tale written by someone else? And I'm going to type that in as you're pondering it. Any ideas about why he might do this? Why bother to create this other author, or the idea that this was an older fairy tale?
Maybe like a play and narration.
Okay, that's a good
I would say,
point.
like, wait, is the grandpa telling the story? So,
Yeah,
like,
Yes.
this dude retold it after. But he brought it to
Okay,
paper,
so
you know?
so you're right.
Yeah.
We're jumping around here. I want to go back in order. Kevin, let's start with you, then I'll go to Devin, then I'm going to come back to Lucas. Kevin, what did you mean by play around with the narration?
Oh, I just meant like a unique storyline with a play on narration. If he's got another book in the story that's made by someone else, he can kind of play upon the storyline of the whole play or whole tale.
Yeah.
a book within a book.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So if you've had a chance to get into the book at all, you'll find that most of the introduction, at least the original introduction, is taking place in, a fairly contemporary version of the United States. Hollywood 1973 is where we start. And it has to do with William Goldman and this frantic search that he sends his wife on to find a copy of the Princess Bride, the original S. Morgenstern Princess Bride. So he's able to weave the reality of this book and its importance to him as a childhood reader, and it sort of reflects on the notion that he has a deep sense of guilt because he has not been able to spend the kind of time connecting to his son that he wishes he could have. So part of the story involves Goldman himself as an author and his desire to make the book that he loved so much as a young child more palatable for his own son. Of course, the big rub there is William Goldman doesn't have a son. That's all made up as well. So that's part of the fiction. So when this happens, authors engage in a process called metafiction. Now, this is where I'm going to go back to Devin for a minute because he gave us the key word there. Do you remember what you said? It was a book. What did you say?
Like, it wasn't like there's a character in this story that's probably represents the made-up author.
Yeah.
And I said also a book within a book.
Yes, there we go. It's a book within a book. So that's what we refer to as a meta text, meaning if he breaks the fourth wall to some extent. So if you've ever seen movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Deadpool, where that character speaks directly to the screen, this is an old technique that comes to us from Shakespeare called the aside, in which one of the characters turns away from the action in their world and talks directly to us as an audience. They break the fourth wall of their reality. So in many ways, William
Could
Goldman, is doing the same thing. Go ahead, Sonia.
I mean, I'm gonna take you way, way back. I think you know the movie. Could this be the same as in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and all the time you thought they had a son and they didn't, and they spoke of this son? And then Burton, being the college professor and the writer and the author of this, finally eliminates the son, and you really think that there was a son, and it never was. It was just a game they played.
Yes,
Huh?
that's the same sort of philosophy. I thought that, and it's been a while since I've read Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but I thought at one point they revealed the son had died, but they did create.
They revealed that at the end, you know, when there was the fallout and all of that, and they engaged the couple in thinking they had a son, because remember, this made the other couple's wife want a child until she found out the truth. There never was a child. There never was a son.
Okay, so in that context, yes, that's absolutely the same sort of metatextual fiction that the Goldman is
It's
engaging
the game.
in. It's kind of like an intellectual game. Real quickly, I want to hear from Lucas, but Caitlin, she posted and she said that she thought that Goldman created the fake author because then he could provide a refutation to his own work. Wow, what a great connection, because in one way of thinking, every text is a kind of argument. And so Goldman kind of refutes, I would say that's correct, correct analysis. Goldman does sort of refute his own work in many twists and turns throughout our text. He even has, once you get into the text itself, these long-winded asides that he creates in parentheses in the text. And he talks about how it drives his own his own editor crazy. And he even provides an example of the types of notes that his editor might have given to him or given to his literary agent, and said, you know, I don't even understand how to edit this book because I don't understand what William Goldman is doing at this point or that point. So yeah, good observation, Caitlin. Lucas, you also had some thoughts about this.
Yeah, I was just more saying when you were talking about the sense of like it being kind of like a story, and that it was kind of you were saying it might have been based on like a different story that like a lot of people may have been able to relate to, and I was kind of thinking it.
Yeah.
Lion King 1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the
Story within
context
the
of
story.
like something where if you know, like a lot of people have been told like a similar story by like, you know, a family member or whatnot, and like he was bringing something that was kind of close to him, like just to paper, you know, he was just happened to be the first person to put it down. But I think it was a story that a lot of people could kind of like relate to in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of aspects throughout the story that connect a lot of different elements, like we were talking about, like it discusses on the posters and stuff. Like there's a lot of things that could interest a lot of people, which I think is like where it can relate to so many different things, you know?
Yes, this is an excellent point that you bring up. So you've given us a lot to consider. So I'm going to have to slow down and unpack a couple of these pieces. So if you're listening or you want to type in the chat while I'm discussing this, I want to unpack a couple of things Lucas mentions there. Let's go ahead and let me explain the true origins of why Goldman wrote this. So a little bit about William Goldman. He was a fairly good writer, but he really found his success when he went to Hollywood to rewrite screenplays. So his first big screenplay that was successful was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, for which he is frequently remembered. He then wrote a screenplay adaptation of his text, Marathon Man, in the 70s, which was a movie starring Dustin Hoffman. And after that, he wrote the screenplay for The Princess Bride. And he later went on to write the screenplay for Stephen King's book,
Oh
Misery,
shoot, we're starting.
which will explain a guest appearance
we're
by
not starting.
Stephen King later in the book. But one of the things that's really interesting about the story of The Princess Bride is that there is an underlying sense of guilt or obligation that Goldman feels. And part
Hey,
of
Devin, can you turn your mic off, dog?
I just did it. It's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The page is cutting through. Can you do a mic mute for a little bit? Thank you. And then, like I said, he's feeling a tremendous amount of guilt about traveling back and forth from his home in New York to LA to complete these movie projects. So to make up his absence, he asked his two daughters what kind of a story they would like. And one said, I want a story about a girl getting married, about brides. The other daughter said, of course, she wanted a story about princesses. So he said, all right, I will just compromise and create a story called The Princess Bride. But what is unique about the writing is that there are certainly moments that are intended as a send-up of the romance and adventure tropes that we find in a lot of classic fairy tales. So yeah, Lucas, I think you've got a good point when you suggest that William Goldman is trying to bring in disparate elements from other famous story tales or fairy tales. But he's doing so in the mode of an adult who has told these stories so many times, and he has heard the same ideas repeated over and over again, that he wants to play around with the expectations that even a younger audience might have for such a story. He's also trying to invest this story with a sense of what happens between a listener and an author or a storyteller when they engage in that experience. There's something kind of magical and timeless about having a story told to you. And if that wasn't true, we wouldn't seek out movies. We wouldn't watch television shows or read novels that we find interesting. At some point, you learn to read so you don't have to have a reader. But that doesn't mean that the process of being told a story makes you feel differently. And again, going back to, I think, Kevin, it was last week, who said that part of the poster's refutation was that just because a story has fantastical elements does not mean that there isn't a deeper connection or deeper meaning behind the text. So I think that's a really good point that you make, Lucas, or good series of points that you make. Any other thoughts about this before we move ahead? You can, again, type them into the chat or just go ahead and speak out.
I'm just gonna say this right now. I'm just skimming over the book right now. I'm already just going radical at how effective these parentheticals are.
Yeah, they're pretty interesting.
I know we already touched base on it, and I already asked.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. But is there like a minimum expectation for revision that needs to be changed? Like I don't know.
No, that's a great question, Kevin. I think primarily I try to focus in two areas when I think about student revision. I try to think about grammar that actually gets in the way or distorts meaning. So I would adapt any of the grammatical suggestions first. And then the yellow text which is word choice or spelling issues, that's relatively up to you to decide if you want to adopt those changes or not. So yellow is optional, green I would take care of.
All right. And then we just take a peer review and maybe make some changes.
Yeah, especially if they offer a great suggestion or pose an interesting question that you hadn't considered before, especially regarding content knowledge. I know last week in our forums, a lot of us talked about this. And I agree for the most part that, except for a few specific instances regarding some popular video games, you probably don't need to go into excessive amounts of detail about the background of the product, but you may find that one of your peer review readers would like you to ground your topic a little bit more clearly in their minds before you get rolling on the ad analysis. So if somebody offered criticism like that, I would definitely take that in hand and think about it.
And then I remember in the example, you had said that the writer added the ad into the paper, like a visual image. Is that something that we should add?
Yeah, if you want to experiment with adding a visual to heighten the sense of understanding for your reader, I don't think that could hurt at all.
Okay.
Good question, Kevin.
Yeah,
Thanks. And
I
I guess
agree.
elaborate on that. Does it need to be in any place in the paper, like the beginning or the end or like in the middle? Or does that matter where we put the picture?
No, it doesn't really matter where you place the image. I think there are better places you could, you could structure it than others. I think I've got a couple of examples here. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember a name of someone who did this. Yeah. So I'm going to share a document with you real quickly. This is a student from my other class. And as you can see here, he uses the images right away because I don't think this is a campaign that too many people remembered or were that aware of. So he puts his images right at the beginning of the paper. But if you're talking about the Gillette ad, for example, which is a media ad, I know another student writing about that, the toxic, masculinity ad. You could place that image or a still from that commercial almost at any other point in the essay, and I think it would be an effective creation. For your own example, can I talk about that, or is that something you'd rather remain private, Kevin?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so Kevin, you did the poster for the film adaptation of The Princess Bride, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So with that one, I might you could probably place it anywhere, but I might place it in the second paragraph when you begin to diagnose the visual content specifically. That's where I would probably structure it as opposed to the beginning of the essay as in Tom's example.
Okay.
Are you still there?
Yes, did you ask me a
okay.
question? I'm sorry, I was listening.
That's all right. So that's, again,
Did you ask me something?
no, I just said that's where I would place it.
Okay, yeah, the second, I think you said that's where I started commenting on the visuals and what was in the context of the visual.
Yeah, that I think I wouldn't place it before that, but any point thereafter, I think would be a really good way to focus on it.
Maybe right there at the end of the second, right there at the end of the second paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, do you, if anybody would like, I'll let me just say this real quickly. I'm not a technical expert when it comes to Word documents, perhaps not as much as I should be. However, if you ever need some help with the basics of importing or applying an image to a Word document, I can help you with the basics. But that's certainly something we can talk about. Okay. Any last thoughts about William Goldman or his design of the text in creating a metatextual experience for his readers?
I think I'll be good for now. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you have some time to start thinking about the discussion questions for this week, and maybe even make some connections with other students for peer review purposes. And we'll pick this discussion up again on Wednesday. Sorry, I thought I heard another question.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Andrea.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Oh no, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm good,
Oh,
thanks.
The discussion post for this week is the revision process, right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. And then I had one other question. When in the review process, in the revision process, in your grading, when things are in yellow or what have you, those are changes that you've already made in the paper. Like one of the things it told me I needed to add a comma, and the comma was already there. You added the comma and then highlighted it, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I was just wondering.
Sometimes commas are tricky because we haven't had a lot of time in this class just yet to discuss comma placement. So rather than say, oh, there must absolutely be a comma here. Well, sometimes commas and comma usage is debatable from one instructor to the next. So I try to think about instances where I'm like, well, I think this would really be, would really benefit from a comma. But if it's not in green, it's not something that absolutely must be there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I see that now.
Good
So what
question.
does blue mean again? In
Blue should be exclusively for your thesis statement, just meaning I think this is what you want to state as your thesis. That's all. It's just and if it's not your thesis, you might want to go back and revisit that sentence to make sure that that what you really want the focus of your essay to be is accurate.
Okay.
Good question. Okay, so I'm gonna end things for today. I want to thank you all for your participation in today's discussion. I think it was a good one, and I can't wait to dig a little bit further into The Princess Bride starting on Wednesday. Until then, this is Mr. Fowler signing off. I bid you a wonderful rest of your day.